Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another live stream. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So, real quick, you guys already know what I'm about to say. Make sure that you smash the like button as you come into the stream. Also, make sure that you share the video out. If you're not subscribed to my backup channels or to my other social media, it's imperative. So make sure that you do that. Take a moment, hit the bell icon on the other Blacklight Revelations channels in the channel section, and also make sure that you're subbed up to all of my other social media. All right. So got a couple more streams that I plan on doing today. Shout out to my man Mike Mellis John. What up with it, bro? Good to see you. So what we're gonna be talking about today is the Trumpire strikes back. All right. So you guys already know all of the whole deal. Got my man Nate G in the building and Volvo. What up with y'all? Good to see you. Now, you guys already know about the situation with Liz Cheney, right? That's one pin knocked down. A retaliatory move as a result of the warrant on Mar-a-Lago, as well as the January 6th committee, right? Investigating the things that went on January 6th. So I don't know if you guys recall Sarah Palin. All right, she was from Alaska. She had a uh, reality TV show. I think her daughter's name is Bristol or something like that. She was on there, and she was involved with a basketball player. I think the guy's name is Glenn Rice. That's the guy that's on the thumbnail. Shout out to my man Carlton Way. What up with it, bro? And got my man Ashanti Black in the building. What up with it, bro? So Sarah Palin is Trump backed, and she's advancing now in the Alaska House race. So now, why am I covering all this? Why am I bringing this up? The reason why I'm bringing this up is because, do you guys remember when I said I didn't think that them issuing that warrant was a good idea if they wanted to try to simmer down the Trump fire? In my opinion, everything that the Democrats are doing is bringing gasoline to the fire and soaking the fire in gasoline. Because, in my opinion, I already said this a long time ago. I think that it's going to be a red wave, but it's not just going to be a regular red wave. I think it's going to be a mega red wave. And in my opinion, when it comes to a lot of these states, not even just red states, when it comes to all the states, anybody that has Trump backed in front of their name is going to beat their competitor by a landslide. You guys saw what happened to Liz Cheney. You're seeing what's going on with Sarah Palin. I'm going to be following this and following that trend, because that should tell you something about the direction of the country. And my question to you guys is, what does that tell you about the direction of the country? Let me know what you guys think. Real quick shout out to Carla Lockhart. Good to see you, Carla. Hope all is well. So let's check this out. And real quick, guys, don't forget, today at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Just Talking with TD and Robb. All right. So if you guys are not subscribed to that channel, take a moment and make sure that you guys go over there and subscribe to that channel. We will be live today at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be a good time. Trump-backed Sarah Palin advances in Alaska House race. All right. Former Governor Sarah Palin advanced to the November general election for Alaska's single House seat alongside three other candidates as a part of the state's new open primaries process that will culminate in ranked choice voting processes. Now, did you guys even know that Sarah Palin was still a factor? Did anybody know that Sarah Palin was still even doing politics? Did anybody know her goofy ass was still a factor? All you got to do is just put Trump back in front of the name. Instant factorization. You know what I'm saying? Palin is taking part in two separate races on Wednesday. the open primary for the November elections, and a special election for the same House seat, which has remained unfilled since March. Palin advanced in the House primary alongside fellow Republican Nick Begich, Democrat Mary Patola, and one more candidate who is yet to be determined, the Associated Press reported. Votes cast in the parallel special election to fill the same seat are still being counted, with Palin, Patola, and Begich being locked in a close race, the outcome of which could be determined by ranked choice voting if no one receives an outright majority. The special election was called to fill the final few months of longtime Representative Don Young's term following his March 18th death, which left Alaska's House seat open for the first time since 1973. Now, here's my question. Who is aware of any of that? Oh, she is in scandals. She was in scandals. You know how these political women get. These political women ain't playing out here. You got OnlyFans Bobert. You know what I'm saying? You got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Monica Lewinsky. You know what I'm saying? These political women get down and dirty. You know what I'm saying? Kim Kardashian needs to you know what I'm saying? Kim Kardashian and Kourtney Kardashian, they need to back up. You know what I'm saying? Sarah Palin was Sarah Palin was the first one messing around with NBA players. The Kardashians need to back up. You know what I'm saying? Take some lessons from the pro. You know what I'm saying? Sarah Palin was out there taking hard fouls and charges before all of them. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my man Honda 666, and shout out to Robb and Ann Battle. What up with it? Good to see you. So now this is what it's saying what we should watch for. Alaska will not start tabulating the ranked choice voting results for 15 days. The deadline oversees absentee ballots to arrive. Under its system, the second choices on the ballots that pick the candidate with the fewest votes will be redistributed and counted as first choice votes until one candidate secures a majority. Incumbent Senator Lisa Murkowski progressed in the state's open primary for the Senate alongside Trump-endorsed Republican Kelly, is this Tishibaka? The Associated Press reported. So this Kelly Tishibaka, she's got the Trump endorsement. So looks like that Trump endorsement, that's the ticket if you're a Republican. Now that's interesting how much influence that has. Did you guys think that an election would look like this? Now this is just in Alaska. The Cheney one was in Wyoming. Now this is before we even get to the midterms. This is before we even get to 2024. So now here's my question. What do you think is causing this? Because whether people want to admit it or not, because the mainstream media will never admit it, but we should talk about these things objectively. What do you think it is that's driving this trend? That's my question. What do you all think is driving this trend? Nate G says, typical reaction from the reactionary conservatives. I agree, slightly. In my opinion, Trump put a lot of stuff in place before he left office as a contingency plan. The Supreme Court justices, a lot of the governors and senators that he backed, it's almost like he has his own safety blanket. And what it seems like is also, even if he doesn't win an election, he still has a huge influence. Because if you pay very close attention, you have conservatives, Republicans, and now this new powerful emerging group called Trump-endorsed Republicans, who are different than establishment Republicans. So if you have Trump-endorsed Republicans, in my opinion, what that means is that Trump has a heavy influence on their politics, which means that even if he doesn't win the election, it's still possible that he can have an influence. In my opinion, that's evident of a strategic contingency plan, which means that he was thinking outside of the box, which also means maybe he was aware that he wasn't going to be president for the next 4 years, but he was already planning another strategy. Because have you ever heard them talk about politicians like this? When there was Bush and Clinton, and then after Bush and Clinton, even now, you don't hear them talk about candidates as far as being Obama backed. They may say former Obama administration secretary, former Obama administration head of department, but they don't say Obama backed. What do you guys think about that? Do you notice that? If you guys notice that, give me a thumbs up. If you don't notice that, give me a thumbs down. So now here it says they will be joined in November general elections by two other candidates who are yet to be determined. Murkowski, who voted to impeach Trump following the January 6 riots, held a slim 1-point lead over Toshiba with half the total votes counted. So these people that hold these slim leads going against the Trump-backed people, they don't seem to fare well. So I don't think that that's going to work out in her favor. Key background. Palin launched her campaign on April 1st, embracing an unabashedly pro-Trump approach by blaming problems like inflation on, quote, the radical left. Okay. Now, I don't know about all that as far as radical, but now here's my question. Shout out to my man Zip. What up with it, bro? Whose fault is inflation? I mean, like, why is this a, you know what I'm saying? Why is this a trivia question? We all know whose fault inflation is. It doesn't matter how many times you repeat Putin's price hike. We know whose fault inflation is. Let me ask you guys this question. Very easy question. Whose fault is inflation? What do you guys think? My man Zip says inflation is intentional. I agree. I believe that the inflation is very intentional. I believe that the inflation is a method to get more Americans emotionally invested in the Russia-Ukraine situation. If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. So now here it says she won the former president's endorsement just 2 days later, with Trump noting that Palin was one of the first high-profile Republican figures to endorse his presidential campaign in 2016. You see that? So we got a little favor for a favor thing going on. Palin vaulted from relative national political obscurity as the governor of one of the least populous states to become a household name in 2008 when Republican presidential nominee John McCain selected her as his running mate. That made her the second ever woman to appear on a majority party's presidential ticket, and she remains the only woman to ever run on a Republican ticket. Palin resigned as Alaska governor in June 2009, just months after McCain lost to Democrat Barack Obama, citing rising legal bills incurred due to a series of ethics complaints she claimed were frivolous maneuvers by her political opponents. That's hilarious. I wonder what kind of frivolous maneuvers she was doing when she was hanging out with that NBA player. So now let's check this out real quick. We got an article here from NBC about the same thing. All right. And let's check out what they're saying about it.
election. Their votes, we know, still coming in. Alaska voters used ranked choice voting for the first time yesterday. And this race includes a potential political comeback for former Governor Sarah Palin. She has been out of politics for years. So where does this race stand now today? And how is this new system of ranked choice voting actually working out?
A potential political comeback here, Morgan, because we aren't going to know the results here for at least a week, in part because so many voters here vote by mail, but also because of that new ranked choice voting system. Not something that all of the candidates were happy about, certainly on the Republican side of this equation. You've heard Donald Trump talk about this as another example of a rigged system. I spoke with another of Sarah Palin's challengers in that House race, Nick Begich, who's also vying for that House seat. He said he's no fan of this system, but that he would accept the election results that yield from it. And again, we don't have those yet, even this morning after Election Day. But Sarah Palin's releasing a statement, again, expressing her displeasure with this system. I'll put it up for you on the screen and read from it. She says, today's the first test of the crazy, convoluted, undesirable ranked choice voting system. She tells everyone who's watching, quote, from the outside tonight, to please learn from Alaska's mistake. She says that voters are confused and angry and feel disenfranchised by this cockamamie system. Of course, the experts that I've talked to about ranked choice voting, not only that it's a secure way of voting.
Now, here's my question. Have you all ever heard of this ranked choice style of voting? That's my question. If you guys heard of that, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't heard of it, give me a thumbs down. Shout out to my man, DJ Elmo.
But that experts say that it's a way for voters to actually have their vote count more because they're not just picking in the binary, choosing only one candidate. And if that candidate loses, their voice is lost. Instead, they're able to rank their votes, in this case, 1, 2, and 3 between the 3 candidates that they were choosing between. And then when the third candidate is eliminated, their vote for second choice will then be divvied up between the 2 candidates that are left. And
now, I need to do a little bit more research on this ranked choice voting system. But what she said, it's kind of not very clear how that works. And I haven't heard of it. This is something that I've never heard of. Nate says that they do it in European countries. So do you want to explain a little bit more clear, Nate, how that actually works? Because I'm not really getting it from her explanation.
Candidate, and if that candidate loses, their voice is lost. Instead, they're able to rank their votes, in this case, 1, 2, and 3 between the 3 candidates that they were choosing between. And then when the third candidate is eliminated, their vote for second choice will then be divvied up between the 2 candidates that are left. And so it is a way, according to experts, to get more small d Democratic representation through the system of voting. And again, not everyone a fan of it, but most of the voters that I've spoken to, even if they were a little bit skeptical, they were optimistic that it would yield a positive result.
So, okay, so there's that.
Give your business.
All right, so now here it says Sarah Palin advances to November's general election for Alaska's House seat. All right, so now I'm interested in this system of voting that they're talking about here, and I'm curious if there's other states that use it. Oh, okay, so you've only heard of it. Well, I'll do some research about it. And I got to agree. If you guys agree with Emmanuel, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. Emmanuel says this selection style is the same as the one now. It doesn't matter. It's a selection, not an election. And I agree. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys haven't smashed that like button, please take a moment and make sure that you guys smash the like button. Also, if you guys have not shared the video out, please make sure that you share the video out. So now here's my question. How does a politician who has been basically unheard of for decades get to a point to where she's actually competing legitimately for Alaska's House seat? How does that happen? How does that work? Let me know what you guys think. In the Senate all primary, Senator Lisa Murkowski and Trump-backed challenger Kelly Tshibaka are among the candidates advancing to the general election. Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin has clinched one of 4 spots in November's ranked choice general election for the state's at-large congressional seat, NBC News projects, keeping alive her hopes for a political comeback. Now, here's my question. off the rip initially, let's make some bets. What do you guys think? Is this going to materialize for her? Is she going to win and get back into that House seat, or is she going to lose? If you guys think she's going to win, give me a thumbs up. If you guys think she's going to lose, give me a thumbs down. Emmanuel says Google search and all the, quote, high testosterone Republicans back her. That's funny. So now here it says she will be joined on the fall ballot by Republican Nick Begich, the namesake grandson of former Democratic representative who held the seat, Democrat Mary Sadler Pitola, a former state lawmaker, and Republican Tara Sweeney, a former assistant secretary for Native American Affairs in the Interior Department. Which is interesting. I actually have a stream about some things going on there that you guys will be pretty interested in that they don't talk about on the mainstream media. In the Senate all-party primary, Senator Lisa Murkowski and Kelly Tshibaka, that's a difficult name to pronounce, Republican rivals locked in one of the former President Donald Trump's grudge matches, will advance to the general election alongside Democrat Patricia Chesbrough, NBC News projects. It was too early to call the fourth finisher in that contest as well. A separate special election Tuesday to fill the remaining months of the late Representative Don Young's term, a race that also features Palin, who has Trump's endorsement, is too early to call. That contest is the state's first to use the ranked choice voting, and NBC News projects no candidate will receive a majority vote in the first round. Results aren't expected to be fully tabulated until later this month. Palin, the 2008 Republican nominee for vice president, finished first in a nonpartisan June primary to secure one of the 4 spots on Tuesday's special election ballot. She faced Begich and Pitola. Al Gross, an independent who finished third in the June primary, later withdrew, leaving 3 candidates. So now here it says in ranked choice elections, voters identify their first choice on the ballots, then rank the other candidates in order of their preference. If no candidate receives a majority of first choice votes on the first count, the election moves into an instant runoff. The candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and the ballots cast for that candidate are recast for the voter's second choice. The process repeats until the candidate reaches a majority. Doesn't that seem like a bunch of extra steps? Doesn't that seem like a bunch of extra steps? It seems like it's just complicating a process that really shouldn't be that complicated. Tuesday's special election will decide who finishes Young's term. Tuesday's primary will determine which 4 candidates compete for a full 2-year term in the at-large seat that begins next year. Palin faced criticism for leaving her term as governor early and embracing her political celebrity after the 2008 campaign. I get it. Sarah Palin is famous, a small business owner said in one Begich ad. But come on, U.S. Congress. So now this says how ranked choice voting could affect Alaska's Senate race this fall. So I'm interested to hear this, and this woman is making a crazy facial expression. So let's see what this is talking about here.
It's the best time of the morning. Time for that pop start, baby.
I'm feeling the vibe today on the show.
Talk about the Alaska Senate race. This was an open primary, which means it includes candidates from all parties with the top 4.
So let's just get this out the way. When they had this Asian lady right here and they had this dude's voice talking, I was like, see, those surgeries starting to blur lines. But then, thank goodness, they switched the camera over and showed that it was some men talking. See, look, watch.
Mark, let's talk about the Alaska Senate race. This was an open primary, which means it includes candidates from all parties, with the top 4 now going on to the general election this November. And it looks like it's going to be a showdown between the incumbent, Senator Lisa Murkowski, and Kelly Tshibaka, who was endorsed by Trump. What's your takeaway from the primary results here, and what do we expect from this big election come fall?
Yeah, Joe, my takeaway is that we're going to have to wait until November. And the overall margin was pretty close between Lisa Murkowski, who ended up emerging with the most votes last night in last night's top four primary. You ended up having Kelly Shabaka with second, but trailing about by 4 percentage points. And then this, the top four candidates advance to November. And then we're going to end up seeing ranked choice voting if no one secures a majority in November. And that will take weeks to count. And so this is just the first stage in Alaska, and we'll get a final word in either November or maybe even December.
All right, so there's that. So now we know a little bit more about this ranked system of voting. I think it's interesting. I'm curious to see how it works. So usually I would talk about this on the All Money Ain't Good Money series. But let's talk about this real quick here. Okay. US may be headed for a recession. Is anybody surprised? Why is the US headed for a recession? Why are we headed in that direction? And how does that affect anybody? And who's responsible for that recession? What are the implications of it? What does that mean? How do you protect yourself? How do you make it so that you're not a victim of the recession? How does that work? What needs to be done? Why are we going towards a recession? What indicators are there that give that give evidence that there's movement towards a recession? Now, here's another question for everybody. What is the government doing about it? Is the government doing anything about this? Have you guys heard of any initiatives that the government might be doing to say, hey, keep the current people who are in office, because we're going to protect everybody from inflation. We're going to make sure that everybody can still live. What do you guys think? Here's how long experts expect it to last. Now, I don't know if you guys saw the community post on Blacklight Revelations 1, but in the UK, inflation is at about 10.1%. It's at a 40-year high, just like how ours is. Everything is at a 40-year high. Gas prices, oil prices, wheat prices, inflation, the consumer price index. Why? And how do you protect yourself from that? Shrinking GDP means high inflation. What does shrinking GDP mean? That means that we're not making as much money as we used to, right? Now, here's my question. Is this recession trend, is that something that is specific to the United States? Or is that going to be a global thing? What do you guys think? Is that going to be a global issue? Or is that just something that's going to happen here? What do you guys think? I'm going to show you guys something real quick. It's important to pay attention to trends all over the world because in most cases, those trends hit the United States later and worse.
Over the past 40 years, 10,000 animals have been killed in
many cases, those things hit the United States later and worse. Let me just see if this is actually going to talk about the inflation here. If not, we can take a quick look at this article. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys haven't smashed that like button, please make sure that you guys smash that like button. All right, so this is what we have right here. UK inflation hits double digits for first time since 1982. Like I said earlier, UK inflation is at 10.1% for the first time in 40 years on Wednesday. We do business with the UK. It's definitely going to affect us. You guys see right here, there's some kind of Inflation Reduction Act that's supposed to happen. This Inflation Reduction Act is not going to tame inflation for Americans. That's what Joe Manchin says. I tend to agree with him. Shout out to Roots Trackers. What up with it? So let's listen to this little news clip right here, and then we'll dive into this article, and then we'll get back into the other one. Remember I told you guys about supersonic jets late last year? If one of the moderators that's in the chat can post the Tales from the Cryptocurrency stream and the Oil and Gold Railroad stream for I'll Be Black, I'd appreciate it. If nobody's able to post it, I'll Be Black, all you got to do is go to the channel section on the homepage and just go down the line on the channel section, and it's there. You'll see it. So now, I don't know if you guys recall, but there was some streams that were done during COVID. And those streams, they talked about how billionaires, I mean, they damn near quadrupled their money during COVID-19. You guys recall that? They were talking about Elon Musk and Bill Gates and all of these different people and how they all increased the amount of money that they have. And they did it during COVID. So I want to show you guys this article real quick if I can get it to pull up right. Just hold on real quick. Let me see. A second here. And real quick, while I'm pulling this up, if everybody can smash that like button, that would be great. Let me see. Oh, Lord have mercy. Hold on real quick. See this kind of stuff right here, man, it always turns into such a process. Let me see. Hold on real quick. Yeah, this is going to take forever. I wanted to show you guys this article. Let me see. It says or enter your password. Let me see. Oh, Lord have mercy. Yeah, it ain't going to let me do it. It's not going to let me do it. But let me see. Maybe I can go back. Continue with Facebook. Wait a minute. Oh. Okay. Hold on. And let me sign. All right. Wait a minute. Give me a second, y'all. Maybe this will. It's still acting stupid. All right. But it's good enough, though. I can show you guys what I wanted to show you real quick. So do you guys remember right when Russia and Ukraine started fighting? Shout out to my man Cameron Jones. What up with it? Look at this. This is what I'm talking about being on the right side of the money. Saudi billionaire made $500 million Russia bet at war onset. Prince Al-Walid's firm invested in Gazprom, Rosneft, and Luke Oil. Kingdom Holding has invested $3.4 billion globally since 2020. Look at all that money. And he did it based on the Russia-Ukraine situation. That's what I'm saying about being on the right side of the price hikes. You need to be positioned on the side of the price hikes to where those price hikes are working for you. That means that you're getting some of that income by doing things like making sure that you have a good investment in commodities like gold, wheat, gas, oil, different things like that. So now UK inflation, shout out to Mimi, hits double digits for first time since 1982. So here's my question. Do you all think that this is going to have any kind of effect on the United States? UK inflation hits 10.1% for the first time in 40 years on Wednesday. Why is everybody around the world reaching their 40-year height of consumer price index? Consumer price inflation in Britain jumped to 10.1% in July, the highest since February. So what is that doing to the cost of living there? That's the question. What's going on with the cost of living? In July, the highest since February 1982, making it the first major rich economy to see price growth hit double digits as surging food costs intensify squeeze on household budgets. What does that mean? We have price hikes, oil price hikes, water shortages. Now, there's about to be a flood in California, and there's a water shortage at the same time. Make that make sense. The increase from June's annual rate of 9.4%, hold on real quick, was above all economists' forecasts in a Reuters poll and fueled bets by investors that the Bank of England will keep on hiking interest rates quickly. That's the same thing that's going on over here. That's the same thing that's going on over here. The banks are hiking those interest rates as well. They're hiking those interest rates to slow down price expansion because price expansion decreases the GDP, even though it's an inverse relationship. It decreases the GDP because people aren't going to be spending as much because stuff is too expensive. Despite warning this month that a recession was likely, the BOE raised its key rate by 0.5% to 1.75, its first half-point raise since 1995. It saw inflation peaking at 13.3% in October, when regulated household energy prices are the next due to rise. Now, here's my question. What is the likelihood of energy prices rising in the United States? You know, most of our electricity, especially on the West Coast, comes from the Colorado River. If you're not subscribed to Blacklight Revelations 4, we've talked about what's going on with the Colorado River. It's drying up. It's drying up so much to the point that it can barely power the turbines that supply the West Coast electricity. So now, if electricity and energy become a scarce resource, what would be the likely thing that you would expect would happen to the price? If there's a shortage, what's going to happen to the price? So now here it says city economist Benjamin Nabarro said that after the latest figures, he now expected inflation to peak above 15% early next year. 15% consumer price index. The United Kingdom is a country that's very similar to the United States. So, do you think that the United States is going to continue on the inflation trend as well? If you guys think that the United States will indeed continue on an inflation trend, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't think that that's going to happen, give me a thumbs down. So now here it says, with the bank focused on signs of more persistent inflationary pressures, we think a hawkish reaction is now all but inevitable, he added. Remember, we were talking about this earlier in the year. Now, remember, this isn't for the United States. This is for the UK. But the way that you figure out how things are going to happen is you pay attention to a situation that's occurring in a place that's similar to where you live, and you can assume that similar results will happen where you are. So now here it says most economists in a Reuters poll earlier this week already expected the BOE to raise interest rates by a further half point to 2.25% after its next meeting in September. 2-year British government bond yields, which are sensitive to interest rate expectations, hit their highest since 2008. Investors priced in BOE rates peaking at 3.75 around March 2023, up from 3.25 previously. These are signs that it will struggle with raising inflation for longer than other economies, including peers in Europe, where energy prices have leapt following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This is all stuff that we said would happen earlier this year. And now we're looking at it. We're looking at it. So now here it says many economists believe U.S. inflation has already topped out after it dropped to 8.5% in July from a 4-decade high of 9.1% in June. Now, here's my question. Do you guys agree with that or do you disagree? Right over here, this article right here, it says Fed officials anticipate significant interest rate hikes until inflation eases, minutes show. As long as the Fed is still raising interest rates, it doesn't matter that this dropped 0.6%. It could spike right back up. Not to mention, we still have tensions going on with Taiwan. So now, if those tensions with Taiwan get to the level of the tensions that we had with Ukraine, we all know that Taiwan is a superconductor manufacturer and distributor. Those are going to affect all of the prices as well, because like we established in some of the other streams, we have superconductors in everything. So anything that has everything, if it's affected by a price, then that means that everything is going to go up. Just like gasoline, just like oil, everything has to be transported. So by default, if gas prices go up, everything goes up because everything requires gas to get to where it's going. But now you can be on the right side of that if you have investments in those kind of companies that distribute oil and distribute gas. Because as the price hikes, you'll have an increase in value and be able to sell those values off. So now here it says British Finance Minister Nadhim Zahawi said fighting inflation was his top priority, and the government was working on options to reduce household energy bills. It sounds like the same exact thing that the United States is doing, which is one of the reasons why I say not a bad idea to see what's going on in the UK. Wednesday's figures from the Office of National Statistics showed that prices rose 0.6% in July from June on a non-seasonally adjusted basis. A 12.6% rise in annual food prices, the biggest since 2008, was the main cause of the jump in CPI inflation from June to July, while higher energy and petrol prices were the main driver over the year as a whole. Takeaway meal costs more, as did packaged holidays. The annual rate of retail price inflation, an older measure, which is still widely used in commercial contracts and set rail fares and government bond payments, hit its highest since March at 12.3%. Although the prices charged by factories rose the most since 1977, jumping by 17.1%, the increase in prices paid by factories cooled slightly, dropping to an annual 22.6% from June's record of 24.1%. In month-to-month terms, input prices rose by only 0.1%, the smallest increase so far in 2022, partially caused by weaker global demand for steel and a fall in crude oil prices as economic growth slows around the world. What does that mean? We live in a global society with a global economy. So if the global economy is slowing down, how independent of that effect do you think that the United States is? Also, do you think that the United States is planning for any kind of cushion against what's going on with the global economy? Or is the United States only prepared to deal with itself, which is not taking into consideration what's going on in the global economy? Shout out to Donna. Donna says inflation is causing rate hikes, or I'm confused. No, what happens in inflation causes price hikes. The Fed then decides to raise the inflation rate to try to slow the price hikes down. So inflation occurs as a result of prices increasing, the dollar becoming weaker. It takes more dollars to buy less items. In order to slow that down, the Fed creates monetary policy that increases the interest rate. See what I'm saying? And that increase of interest rate is to deter people from spending, to hopefully drive down demand, which in turn, driving down demand would drive down the price. So now here it says economists also said global shipping and commodity prices were beginning to fall as C-19 supply chain bottlenecks eased, which could cause inflation to slow around the end of 2022. This would help to ease the Monetary Policy Committee's fears about high inflation becoming ingrained and thus convince them to stop hiking bank rates sooner than investors currently expect, said Samuel Toombs of Pantheon Macroeconomics. The forecast that Britain's inflation problem will last longer than in other countries stem in part from price regulations that mean energy companies must wait before passing higher wholesale costs on to customers. So now, have you guys seen the energy issues going on in Texas? Have you guys seen the energy issues going on in California? If you guys have, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't, give me a thumbs down. Because those things are happening. I don't know if anybody's aware. They're happening for a lot of reasons. One reason because of oil prices. Another reason because of water shortage. There's a lot going on out there. You know what I'm saying? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, we got 33 people watching. Shouts out and thank you to all 33 people. If everybody can take a moment and smash that like button, it'll get us up to 57 likes, which would be awesome. Remember, we got a goal of 100 per stream, and we're getting there. So keep up the good work, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Catsy. What up with it, Catsy? So you guys saw what just happened there. Got some weirdness going on with the internet. It's all these damn ads and all this. So now here it says the current typical household energy bill is just under 2,000 pounds. Look at this. The current typical annual household energy bill is just under 2,000 pounds. That's a lot of damn money for a the annual household energy bill. Okay. That's almost double what it was a year ago, and is likely to rise above 4,000 pounds in January, according to industry analyst Cornwall Insight. Millions of British households will struggle with higher bills, and supermarkets already say consumers are switching to cheaper brands. Bread, milk, and cheese, as well as ham, bacon, vegetables, and confectionery were some of the foodstuffs rising most in price, the ONS said. Frozen food chain Iceland said it would offer small interest-free loans to help poorer customers. Data on Tuesday showed workers' earnings adjusted for the consumer price index fell by 4.1% in the 3 months to June, the biggest drop since records began in 2001, though headline pay is still rising at a pace that concerns the Bank of England. All right. So that's what is going on in England, which, as much as they try to downplay it, sounds a lot like what's going on here. Now, if you listen to the mainstream media, everything is fine. Biden said we don't have anything to worry about as far as a recession go. Now, here's my question. Does anybody believe Biden? I hope not. So now, this article from Newsweek that we had started, it says that the U.S. may be headed for a recession. Here's how long experts expect it to last. So to me, what this says is that they're just assuming that we're going to go into a recession. And I got to agree. That's what the evidence looks like. The U.S. economy shrank for a second consecutive quarter, according to Thursday's gross national product report, suggesting that the nation may be heading into a recession. Now, if you guys watch all of my live streams, you will see the video clip where Joe Biden said that we're not going into a recession. He literally said that. That came directly out of his mouth. It seems like he's the only one that believes that. He's the only one that believes that. The latest Commerce Department data shows that the GDP declined for a second time this year at a negative 0.9% annualized pace from April through June. The year's first quarter showed a GDP decline of 1.6%. Two negative GDP quarters in a row are common, but not officially used to define a recession. Opinions differ on how long a recession could last, given that an economic downturn depends on several factors. But experts agree that the public concern over inflation is warranted, even if a recession hasn't been declared yet by the National Bureau of Economic Research, the official arbiter. Because of the NBER's definition of recession, it involves more factors than just two consecutive quarters of GDP contraction. The call won't come for at least a few months. That said, economists say the troubling state of the economy is not lost on the everyday person who is likely feeling the effects of rising inflation, less than optimal job prospects, and steep interest rates. So now, despite the fact that they keep concentrating on how the consumer price index percentage slightly decreased, the trends are still looking the same. Would you guys agree? This here sounds a lot like what we just read about in the UK. So now my question for everybody is, what does that say is happening? Where does that say we're going? And another question is, how do you protect yourself from it? Because that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is how to protect yourself. And remember what I said, you don't want to collect dollars. You want to protect your purchasing power. You guys remember that? Because all money ain't good money. How good is printed money if it ain't worth anything? Arthur Laffer, an economic advisor to Ronald Reagan for both of his presidential terms, is predicting that the earliest turnaround for the economy will be in 5 years. He told Newsweek that his timeline depends on what he sees as two key events: that the GOP can flip the House and the Senate in November's midterm elections, and that the party wins the presidency in 2024. He said that a recessionary economy would require at least 2 years of congressional leadership that prioritizes free markets and tax cuts, according to conservative economic thinking, before an additional year of such policies. If that were the case, January 1st of 2027 would be the first time you would actually see a material change in the United States economy, said Laffer, who also served as an economic advisor to President Donald Trump during his 2016 political campaign. While Laffer laid out a detailed timeline for the economic slump, others said there were still too many factors up in the air to set a hard deadline. The nation is still dealing with the huge impact C-19 had on the global supply chain, and much of the economic uncertainty is tied into the duration and outcome of Russia's war against Ukraine. Now, I don't know if you guys have checked out the series called The Russia Report. That's a playlist on Blacklight Revelations 1, but you guys should check it out because we literally laid all of this out and we're watching it all go down exactly the way we talked about it. So if you guys haven't binge watched that Russia Report playlist, I'd advise everybody to go watch that and take some notes. There's some people in the chat here who watched that whole series. Has it been accurate? What have we been wrong about since the whole Ukraine thing started? If there's anything that we've been incorrect about, put it in the comment section. So now here it says, in a best case scenario, things could turn around in a matter of months, according to Joanne Weiner, an economics professor at Georgetown University. If the Fed manages to tame inflation through its interest rate increases while also keeping consumers confident that the economy is not going to tank, then any recession that arises may be short, she said. The 2020 economic contraction lasted just 2 months, she pointed out. If the Fed is successful, Weiner said, the recession could be over before its negative effects make a real impact on the economy. I disagree. And another thing that I believe is that they're also understating the current effects of past recessions. Because if you ask me, there's been about 2 or 3 recessionary periods that the United States still has not completely recovered from. We're in a constant state of recovery. So every time we hit a recession or every time we hit an economic hiccup, it puts us back even further. So we have more ground to cover to get back to the starting point. Shout out to my man RG Titan. What up with it, bro? So now here it says her predictions echo those of Larry Summers, a top economic advisor to President Barack Obama, who last week said that the economy's future will depend on how skillful the feds turn out to be. Summers has drawn national attention since pointing out that the Biden administration's missteps on inflation. So Now, this is an economic advisor to Obama who's also pointing out that Biden had missteps on inflation, which they did. So, but now remember, they said that if you say that it's the fault of the left, you're incorrect. Well, whose fault is it then? Because what we got right here is we have an economic advisor to President Obama, who I would assume would be considered someone on the left, also criticizing the economic and monetary and foreign policy of people on the left, pointing out the Biden administration's missteps on inflation. So how's that work? Let me know what you guys think. How does that work? Laffer said that while he and his colleague disagree over the cure for potential recession, Summers has been extremely good at analyzing and projecting what's happening. I do agree with him verbatim on what has caused this and what damage is done and why it happened, Laffer said. He and I are on exactly the same page with regards to this prognosis. Last Sunday, Summers emphasized to CNN that the U.S. needs strong action from the feds. Strong action from the Fed means not to just print up money and not to just hike inflation. They need an actual monetary strategy, which I don't think any of them have, because they just continue to do the same tactics that they've always done, which none of those tactics work. What they're doing is just prolonging a bad financial situation. That's what happened with COVID. Do you guys realize that they're not even taking into consideration that part of what we have going on now is a result of people being rebound broke from COVID? They paid people all of that money during COVID, and people got comfortable with it, and they started to spend it like it was a steady income stream. And so it jacked up how much liquid income they had available. So then what happened is, poof, all of that money is now gone. Now people can't make their debts and they can't pay their bills, and it's also taking their available income down. We went over that extensively in the first All Money Ain't Good Money. So if you guys haven't watched All Money Ain't Good Money #1, check that out, because that's laid out very clear. There were some really good articles about people who are making over $250,000 currently that are living paycheck to paycheck as a result of things like that. So what I want to do is I want to lay out strategies that you guys can use to protect yourself, to kind of negate. Because let me ask you guys something. Shout out to everybody in my chat, because nobody in my chat, when we talk about stuff, nobody says, well, how is that a black issue? Right? I don't have anybody in my chat on any of my channels that ever says any annoying shit like that. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys for that, because like I said, everything is a black issue. Now, how is this a black issue? The same economy that is unstable currently is the same economy that the racial wealth gap exists within, which means that any of these effects on the economy trickle down to the expansion or the closing of the racial wealth gap, which is one of the reasons why studying the economy is so important, because studying the economy in general is good to help you to be able to understand market trends and invest your money. But if you have a goal of trying to close the racial wealth gap, then you need to understand what the micro and macroeconomic effects of the movement of the economy is actually doing on that. Because what people don't understand is that this whole racial wealth gap thing, look at a graph, it's not linear. It's parabolic. And since it's parabolic, that means that it's affected by many different factors, not just X and Y. The formula to make up the GDP, That's not a two-factor equation. It's about 4 or 5 variables that add together to make up the GDP. Taxes, revenue, imports, exports, all kind of different factors. So now if the microeconomy of a racial wealth gap exists within this larger global economy, what is 8.6% inflation doing to the racial wealth gap? I'm going to tell you exactly what it's doing. If you're not getting raises at your job that are greater than 8.6%, if you're not getting interest rates on your investment that are greater than 8.6%, every dollar you make, you're currently losing money. You can subtract 8.6% from every dollar that you're making. If your money is static and the price of living is going up and you have to pay that, and at the beginning of the rate hike, if you're making the same amount as you are after the rate hike, you're paying more money. Your money makes less, which what does that do to the racial wealth gap? That accelerates it. If you're looking at a graph, after 8.5%, maybe the racial wealth gap had a slope of maybe like 45 degrees. At that point, it'll go to a slope of 30 degrees. It's going to expand faster because you're just being static and just standing there being more broke, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the economy is working against you. So if you're just standing there holding your money and you're black, as a result of the way that the economy is now, you're automatically progressing towards being more broke. And the reason why is because you don't have anything to counteract the effects of the inflation. And if you can't counteract the effects of the inflation, you can add the rate of inflation to the rate of the racial wealth gap expansion, and it's going to accelerate it by that much. That's the same thing as if I'm driving a car down the street. And then say, for instance, there's a huge wind behind me. And I'm driving 40 miles an hour, and the wind is like 200 miles an hour, and it adds an extra 10 miles an hour to my car speed. Okay, so and now I'm going 40 miles an hour, but with the wind behind me, now I'm going 50. The car is the racial wealth gap, and the wind is the economy. So the economy is increasing the racial wealth gap. That's why it's important to look at this stuff. And right now, we're going into a situation where the economy is not helping. This is for people that already have a racial wealth gap that's going towards zero. This is not a good economic environment. This is a challenging economic environment. So people need to really be paying attention to their money, to their budgets, to their investments, to things like interest rates, to what you decide to use a credit card for versus what you decide to pay cash for. When the Fed is constantly increasing the interest rate, that matters. Shout out to my man, Mr. Real Estate. What up with it, bro? That matters. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, if we continue with the kind of ostrich policies that we had in 2021, there's going to be much, much more pain later. Douglas Holtz Eakin, who previously served as a director of the Congressional Budget Office and a senior economic advisor to President George H.W. Bush, agrees that a recession call would ultimately depend on what central bank does next on interest rates. This is a classic situation of once you let inflation become entrenched, you have no good choices. And the reason why is because it's like a snowball, like an avalanche going down a hill. You just have to let it go and take its natural course. Now we got Carlton Way down there talking about, now how is this a black issue? I don't know, because black people like to spend money and we got a racial wealth gap, so we won't need to be spending no money. That's how. Ain't no way like the Carlton way. You know what I'm saying? Look at this. You either let people live with inflation, which is clearly politically unsustainable, or you do things to combat inflation and run the risk of a recession. And that's where they are. And that's what I'm telling you. So we had this kind of situation brewing at the beginning of COVID-19, right? And they gave out all of the government surpluses, the stipends and all of that stuff. That made it worse for right now. They shouldn't have just gave out ongoing payments. Like, that's not how that works. You got to keep people used to dealing with the same levels of income that they have so that they don't begin to get comfortable and overspend. Because once they get comfortable and overspend, when you take that extra income away, that's going to create a shock. And once you create that shock, people aren't going to be able to maintain paying their bills properly because they're expecting that extra money from the government. If you look up any economic report, anybody that's critical of how C-19 was handled, they felt that there shouldn't have been so many payouts. It shouldn't have been so many frequent payouts. Black people like to spend money. You know what I'm saying? Everybody spends money. Black people need money to live. Shit. You know what I'm saying? Everybody ain't going to the soup kitchen. You got to go to the grocery store. Inflation in the UK is at 11.1%. You know what I'm saying? See, when I hear people say, well, how is that a black issue? To me, that just that what that tells me is that you just don't pay attention to reality. Like, I could be like, yo, there's this thing that's called the Apophis asteroid and it's heading towards Earth. Oh, that's not a black issue. Okay. I guess. Yeah, and 3 is too many. And there was a lot of people that were getting extra money as a result of their unemployment payouts. And the thing is it just depends on what kind of qualifications you had. Businesses got a lot of COVID-19 payouts. They got a lot. And a lot of people use those business payouts and apply them to their own personal matters. My thing is I don't need to prove anything that I'm saying because you're feeling the effects of it right now. I don't need to say anything else. You will feel what I'm saying when you pick up that gas pump and have to spend $40 to $50 filling up an economy car. There was many different stipend programs for COVID-19. For one, the government gave healthcare facilities about $10,000 to $50,000 per patient for respiratory reimbursements. That money got trickled down to people who were in healthcare. The government gave a lot of people unemployment stipends because their jobs were closing early. Just because a particular individual may have only gotten 1 or 2 payouts, that doesn't mean anything, because in a world of 6 billion people, you're a microscopic non-factor. Just like how in a vast universe, this planet is a microscopic non-factor. What matters is the sum of everything. That's what matters. And the sum of everything is what you're looking at now. People can get turned off by my live stream, but when they turn into the grocery market parking lot and turn to that fresh vegetable that they plan on buying, you might not hear shit that I just said, But you definitely gonna hear that monetary policy when they scan it with that barcode scanner at the cash register. Why is this shit so high? Because of a whole lot of things. A whole lot of things that people would understand a lot better if there was a little bit more investment in microeconomics when we were in high school. But you were just talking about what individual people got. Yeah. People who got unemployment. Not necessarily people just getting money from COVID-19. I'm talking about people who lost their jobs as a result of COVID-19 and were on COVID-19 unemployment for a very long time. People got used to that income. And then the government just took it away. And when they took it away, there was no replacement. And as a result of that, people had a hard time paying their bills. People getting unemployment is contingent on how long they were unemployed. So if you were, I don't know what kind of COVID payouts you got. I don't know what you were doing. I don't know if you got PPP loan. I don't know. So I'm talking about in general, not just your situation in particular, because I don't know your situation. And then there was state programs as well. The federal government had programs, state government had programs, and different states had different programs. California had a lot of different programs. New York had a lot of different programs. Depending on what state you were in, if you were in a southern state, a lot of those conservative governors, they didn't really do anything as far as affecting the economy. They didn't do COVID lockdowns and different things like that. So there wouldn't have been any need for them to really do these kind of programs, if that makes any sense. Yeah, Missouri's a you know what I'm saying? It's kind of southern, so I they're probably conservative down there. So I highly doubt they would have did much. Did they do anything like as far as lockdowns? Did you guys have extended lockdowns, or was it just kind of the same like how Florida did? As far as money, Missouri didn't give anything additional. Yeah, I didn't hear too much about Missouri doing too much. I don't think Florida or Texas or Oklahoma or any of those places really did much. So it just depends on where you are and what you used it for. Like if you used it for a business or whatever, if it was unemployment. But if they got articles about it, you could look it up in the Sacramento Bee. You can look it up in the Mercury Times. We locked down but open when everybody else did and stayed open. That's good. But that probably put y'all in a bind though. Because if y'all got locked down and they didn't give anything as far as money. But now here I got a question for you, Felicia, because that's an interesting situation. How are people doing now? Are they having a difficult time adjusting from the lockdown financially to now, or is everything about the same? Because I would assume that if they didn't give extra programs where you guys were, people were probably used to being on their budget, and it's not really causing people significant economic issues. The only time when there would be issues would be when they've got people on a habit of receiving those supplements, and then when the crisis goes away and they take the supplements away, people had budgeted that into their cost of living. So how are you guys doing as far as a lot of businesses started closing left and right and they are still here? Yeah. And that was the thing that happened as far as those businesses closing, probably because not so much of like what the government did versus didn't get because of the lockdowns. It didn't let them operate in good business hours, and also because of the supply chain bottlenecks that they had. which is crazy. And then you got situations like what happened in Oregon. I don't know if you heard about that. There was specific COVID-19 money that was earmarked for black businesses, and white and Asian businesses tied it up in court. They sued the Oregon state government to stop them from paying it out. Which is crazy. You got to deal with that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Which you shouldn't have to. Roots Tracker says businesses close up, but I'm seeing a lot of us opening boutiques for stuff we don't need, but opening nonetheless. It's weird. Yeah. Yeah. That's a fact. And that's scary to me because, like, my thing is, how do they plan to maintain their revenue stream in order to sustain that business? Especially if it's, like you say here, for stuff that we don't need. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you open up a business, you should open up a business and provide products that are essential. Because if they're non-essential products, things that people, quote, don't need, those are the first things that people cut off of their budgets in situations like this, when you got the economy going bad. My man RG Titan says exactly. Then the black farmers just got shut out by Jim Crow too. Yeah. Then you got the gentrification. What's going on in New York? What's going on in New Jersey? What's going on in Detroit? That video that we just watched about Detroit. And, you know, TD hip hop media always talks about that fourth industrial revolution. They're already testing out the delivery droids in California. So once they get those delivery droids gone and in place, there's not going to be any more Uber Eats, no more Instacart, no more Amazon, FedEx deliveries, probably no more mail people. You know what I'm saying? Oh man, yeah, like I know exactly what you mean. Trust me, I know exactly what you mean. And trust me, I get your frustration. I get it. I don't even that's a whole nother stream for a whole nother day. That's a whole nother stream for a whole nother day. But I get exactly what you're saying, because that's true. And you see that a lot. Like, it's common. So now here it says, see, and this is what I'm talking about right here. You either let people live with inflation, which is clearly politically unsustainable, or you do things to combat inflation and run the risk of recession. And that's where they are. And you got to find a balance between that, which sometimes is difficult to do. Sometimes that's impossible to do. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, despite the recent reports, Holtz-Eakin doesn't believe the U.S. is in a recession yet because it's still too soon to spot a broad and sustained decline in the economy. Now, here's my question. What's the threshold for how long they're expecting a downward trend? I mean, what is the expectation? How long do we got to sit here and wait? Not a black-owned car dealer storefront, but no cars, man. That's wild. That I don't even know what to say, Felicia. That's crazy. I don't even know what to say. Essential oils aren't very essential. Facts. Unless it's omega-3, you know what I'm saying, or omega-6 or 9. But that ain't what they talking about. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, I'm more worried about next year than this year, he said. While the economy may squeak by the second quarter, the next two GDP reports could bring solid, unimpressive growth, he predicted. Now, what I think that the biggest factor that's going to affect the GDP is what ends up playing out with Taiwan as of right now. What ends up playing out with Taiwan, and as long as there's no climate calamity on the West Coast. Because on the West Coast and on Texas, those electric grids are hanging on by a thread. You know how, like, when you are a little kid and you're trying to pull your tooth out, but it hurts real bad, but it's just like hanging out your mouth? That's how the electric is. Apparently 6 and 9 are better than 3. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's good information. U.S. recession is going to be long and severe. That's what an economist says. What do you guys think about that? But remember, Biden is still saying that we're not under the threat of a recession. Now, I want to know what you guys' honest opinion is. Do you guys think that we have a legitimate threat of a recession? If you guys think that there is indeed a legitimate threat of a recession, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't think that, give me a thumbs down. As we've been watching these trends, if you ask me, it's coming. And I believe it is going to be prolonged, and I believe that it's going to be severe. By the time they say we're in a recession, we'll be in a depression. I think that Cassie, I don't know what the definition exactly is, but I think it has to do with time frame. It's how long a recession lasts. But I can look it up real quick. Hold on real quick, you guys. If you guys haven't smashed that like button, if you guys can, please take a moment and smash that like button. Economic depression definition. Yeah, it is based on time frame. But what's interesting is there's no time frame given. So I don't know if you guys can see this right here, but it says depression. Depression in economics. A depression is sustained long-term downturn in economic activity in one or two economies. It is a more severe economic downturn than a recession, which is a slowdown in economic activity over the course of a normal business cycle. So that's what's different. Recession is based on a business cycle. A depression is unusual and extreme form of recession. So basically, a depression is prolonged, high accelerant, chronic recession. Basically, like if you talked about it like in like the way that they talk about a medical disease, like if you talk about this like an economic disease, it's long-term increased chronic recession. Severe. So now, one of the signs that you would see about it, Donna, is the increasing prices of everything. Consumer price index increasing is a sign. Increase in price of commodities is a sign. Gold was at a 40-year high just a couple months ago. Gold was at a 40-year high just a couple months ago. You know what I'm saying? Wheat was at a 40-year high. Oil per barrel was at a 40-year high. Another thing that you have to look at is the GDP. You might not see that immediately, but if you pay very close attention to the GDP, the steady alleged increase. I think the United States sets a goal of a 2% increase in GDP per year. It'll go below the projected increase. Another thing that happens is the housing market starts to become volatile. And you can see that now prices are going up and prices are going down. And then another thing that you will see is the Fed hiking the interest rate. If you pay for things with a credit card, you'll see your APY increase. If you have a mortgage, you'll see your APY increase. Any kind of money that you have, where you're paying off a debt, if you haven't paid it all off, the per month price of it will increase because of the increase in the APY. The APY is going to make your monthly payments higher. That's why during this time, you probably want to try to hurry up and get all your debt paid off, whatever you can. It's probably not realistic for everybody to pay off all their debt, but you want to pay off as much as you can so you're not getting hit by that APY. Getting hit by that high APY, which is basically, quote unquote, the cost of living increase on borrowed money. Just like how you have an increase in commodities or increase in things that you buy at the store, a market of goods, which would be the consumer price index, the increase in your borrowed money is the interest rate hike that the Fed makes, if that makes any sense. And thank you for throwing those definitions in the comment section, Don. Appreciate it. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys haven't smashed the like button, please take a moment and make sure that you smash that like button. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and take a moment and hit that bell icon twice. All right. So the U.S. recession is going to be long and severe. The only person that doesn't believe that is Joe Biden. An economist known for his bearish tendencies is warning Americans that a recession will be long and severe. Nouriel Roubini, also referred to as Dr. Doom, I like this guy already, said Monday that a recession could bring financial distress across the board. Despite a strong jobs report, the U.S. economy has left many Americans seeing higher grocery bills despite a dip in July overall inflation. Now, here's the thing. Inflation was at a 40-year high. Inflation was at a 40-year high. Nobody's going to care about a 0.5% dip. That's like if something that I pay for that's usually $10 has increased to $20 and they're like, well, you know, the price decreased $2, so now it's back down to $8. I'm still used to paying $10. I'm still outraged. You know what I'm saying? The Federal Reserve has attempted to curb inflation by raising interest rates, which, remember, they're doing that. They're raising the interest rates to deter people from spending and also to deter people from borrowing. But some experts say that the country is headed for or may already be in a recession. We are in a sharp slowdown. We've had 2 negative quarters of growth in the first half of 2022. Roubini, an Iranian-American economist who accurately predicted the housing bubble burst in 2008, told Bloomberg on Monday, the recession is going to be long, protracted, severe, and associated with financial distress across the board. The Federal Reserve most recently hiked interest rates another 75 basis points in late July to thwart inflation rate of 8.5%, which followed a similar raise in June, marking the largest back-to-back increases seen in decades. Roubini implied that the increases aren't enough to combat inflation. And let's not forget that inflation isn't self-resolving. You know what I'm saying? The inflation is not self-resolving. It's being quantitatively eased through interest rate hikes. It's not naturally fixing itself. So that's something that people should be aware of as well. So now here it says, in fact, Roubini expects the Feds will need to hike interest rates further to bring the 8.5% inflation rate to the target 2%. That's what our target is. Inflation is only supposed to be 2%. but it's at 8.5%. And they're saying, well, you know, it's a good thing that it's decreased to 8.5. 8.5 is still 6.5 points higher than it's budgeted to be, which is bad news. Yeah. The jobs report is not accurate. That's a fact. Unemployment claims have been up for months. There are more jobs than unemployment claims. Yeah. Unemployment report is a lagging indicator. And one of the reasons why it's a lagging indicator is because of the way that they calculate it. It's calculated in an inaccurate way. And there's also inaccurate qualifications that count as, quote, unemployment. So now here it says the Fed's rates should be going well above 4% to push inflation towards 2%, he said to Bloomberg. If that doesn't happen, inflation expectations are going to get unhinged or you'll get a hard landing. Yet, despite the growing concern regarding a recession, the Fed's interest rates are still relatively low. All right, so now check this out. This is a video right here, and this is about inflation versus recession. So let's check this out and see what they're talking about.
It's like a game of tug of war. Recession versus inflation. Experts I spoke with say recession could actually be key in fighting rising inflation.
So it's the lesser of two evils.
It's the lesser of two evils.
Noah Rubin in Boca Raton is an investment advisor.
We've been doing reports recently about school supplies, about housing. Everything is becoming more and more expensive. And historically, if inflation continues to run the way it is, it becomes crippling.
With inflation at a 40-year high, he says it's no secret something's got to change. And the solution, in his opinion,
having a recession, which slows the economy down. And slowing the economy down is all about spending less, purchasing less. And that is one of the main ways to stop prices from rising.
Are there any signs that we're going to get there?
Technically, we are in a recession. There's a calculation that's done. If we have 6 straight months of negative growth, the technical is if we have 2 quarters of negative GDP, but what that really means is if we have 6 straight months of negative growth.
See, so there you go. I mean, like what they're doing is basically covering up the fact that we are indeed in an inflation or in a recession. And we've been saying this for quite some time. We have been saying this for quite some time, but they don't want people to lose faith, for one, in the dollar, and for two, they don't want people to lose faith in the financial system as a whole. So they keep trying to prolong the inevitable. So you guys just heard what this economist said. For the most part, this economist has been consistent for the most part with basically what we have said for quite some time now. Shout out to my man Tarek. What's up with it, bro? So let's just start this out again real quick and listen very closely. And based on what you see in the stores, what you see on the news, what you see at the gas pumps, your personal experience, does your personal experience match up with their description of a recession? Let me know in the comment section.
it's like a game of tug of war. Recession versus inflation. Experts I spoke with say recession could actually be key in fighting rising inflation.
So it's the lesser of two evils.
It's the lesser of two evils.
Noah Rubin in Boca Raton is an investment advisor.
We've been doing reports recently about school supplies, about housing. Everything is becoming more and more expensive. And historically, if inflation continues to run the way it is, it becomes crippling.
With inflation at a 40-year high, he says it's no secret something's got to change. And the solution, in his opinion,
having a recession, which slows the economy down. And slowing the economy down is all about spending less, purchasing less. And that is one of the main ways to stop prices from rising.
Are there any signs that we're going to get there?
Technically, we are in a recession. There's a calculation that's done. If we have 6 straight months of negative growth, the technical is if we have 2 quarters of negative GDP, but what that really means is if we have 6 straight months of negative growth, we're in a recession.
But Rubin says we're not quite feeling the benefits of that quite yet, so to speak.
Airlines are still overbooked. People are still vacationing. People are still buying cars. The Federal Reserve has effectively come out and said inflation is so bad, we are willing to push the economy into a recession.
Another sign the country is.
So did you guys hear what he said? So that's basically what the monetary policy is doing. Inflation is so bad, we're willing to push the economy into a recession. That's what the goal of the interest rate hikes are. If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. He says we're at a point where inflation is so bad, what we have to do is we have to look at all of the factors and we have to make a trade-off. We'll trade a recession to slow down the economy. So what that means, remember, the reason why they make those rate increases on the interest rate is to slow down the economy. Slowing down the economy is a recession. So if the Fed continues to use interest rate hikes as a strategy to combat inflation, if that's the only thing that they can do to combat the inflation, if that's the only thing that they can think of, if that's the only viable solution, whatever, then a recession is inevitable. It's inevitable. Yet you got Joe Biden saying it's not going to happen. Why is it not going to happen?
Inflation is so bad, we are willing to push the economy into a recession.
Another sign the country isn't in a recession.
Facts to
Job
me.
growth. The hot labor market added 528,000 jobs last month, yet those jobs are not paying the bills.
It's sad to say goodbye.
Last week,
It sucks.
Contact 5 introduced you to Katie Rister.
3 bedrooms, 1 bath.
She'll be moving out of her Delray Beach home on Thursday due to an eviction because she couldn't afford rent.
Oh, it's stressful.
2 jobs and 90 hours a week. She still can't find an affordable place to live.
Price of a hotel per week is just as much as a rent payment. So my only option is to probably sleep in my car for a month or two till I can save up some money to fix my credit.
We're in a short-term crisis right now, and a lot of people are feeling it. I would say longer term, let's remember how strong and committed we as Americans are. We will come through this.
So when somebody says something like that, that means that they have no clue how they're going to get through it. You see, when it's real technical, yeah, did you hear the technical definitions he was given earlier? A recession is when there's 2 quarters of negative growth. See, we can nail it down to objective numbers. 2 quarters of negative growth, negative GDP growth, 2 quarters. All right. So we know the time period of negative GDP growth. We know what the number is. Well, how do we get out of this? Well, we're strong American people. No, that doesn't mean anything. The way that you answer a question like that is you say, what we need to do is strengthen our economy and grow our economy for 2 straight quarters. How are we going to do that? Well, that's going to be difficult because of the way that our economy is structured. So this could be an ongoing problem. But see, you don't want the public, hearing that, because then people are going to freak out. And then when people freak out, they're going to take all their money out of the bank. And that's what's called a run on the bank. Once a run on the bank starts, then that's a cascade that occurs that creates what's called a balance of payment crisis, which, if you ask me, that's where the United States is headed for anyway. How many people are familiar with a balance of payment crisis?
Total belief.
I'm Contact 5 consumer investigator Jessica Bruno.
See, listen, I want you guys to listen very closely what he says. When it's time to ask the complicated question that nobody wants to hear the answer to, well, hey, use your fighting American spirit. Yeah, okay.
A short-term crisis right now, and a lot of people are feeling it. I would say longer term, let's remember how strong and committed we as Americans are.
What is it? Why? Why remember that? How is that going to help me with anything? Strong and committed to what? How is that going to improve the economy? Nate is on target. Translation: many people are going to suffer for a long time. Yeah. Now, I know there's some people in here that know what a balance of payment crisis is. If there's anybody in here that knows what a balance of payment crisis is, give me type your definition in the comment section. So now here it says, according to an article by Bankrate, although the Fed has been raising interest rates, its borrowing rate is still historically low. The federal funds rate has remained below its historic average of 4.61% since 2007. From 2008 to 2015, the federal funds rate was zero. Federal funds rate reached its highest point in the early 1980s when it soared to 20%. Robini said he felt although inflation may have peaked, he's unsure of how fast it may fall. I don't think the monetary policy is tight enough to push inflation to 2% fast enough, he said. During the last week of July, an editing war broke out on the Wikipedia page for recession after Biden administration officials downplayed figures showing the United States had entered an unofficial recession following 2 quarters of negative economic growth. 2 consecutive quarters of decreasing GDP is the unofficial definition of a recession. Did not just say that. How the Biden officials were lying about it. And I've been telling y'all we're in a recession. It's not debatable. We're in a recession. So now, how many people have watched any videos from the Russia Report series or Russia versus Ukraine, the playlist? How many people have watched any videos from that? If you guys watched any videos from that, give me a thumbs up in the comment section. So what I'm about to do real quick, I'm about to show you guys this. Give me a second here. Let me see. Real quick, I got a question. Did you guys hear about that those African reporters that the Biden administration wouldn't answer questions from in the in the interview? Did you guys hear about that? Crazy. Let me see real quick. Hold on. I don't know what. Wait a minute. Oh, hold on real quick. Channel dashboard. Here we go. All right. So I'm trying to find you guys a good balance of payments crisis video. That's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculously long. Let's see. Oh, so balance of payments crisis basically leads to what's called a currency devaluation. So I'm going to actually see if I can find a video about a currency devaluation. How many people know what a currency devaluation is? All right, maybe this will work. Maybe this video right here would be good. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's some it's some good foreign instructor. Yeah, Jimmy Dore did a video about it. That's where I saw it at. All right, so why do countries devalue their currency?
For joining in. Today, we're going to understand why countries devalue their currency. We're also going to get a glimpse of what inflation is, understand the barter system, because that's where it all starts. And by understanding these two concepts, we will get an understanding of countries and how they devalue their currency. So let's just jump right in. If you're new to the channel, I'd like to welcome you. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy watching this video. So let's get started. So let's start off all the way back in the day. So let's take an example of 3 different characters, Mike, Joe, and Larry. And each one of them were able to provide one particular item that was of key importance. So Mike would be rice, Joe would be bricks, and Larry would be clothing. Now, this covers the essentials, food, clothing, and shelter. And what they would do is that since one village was able to produce food very well, and the other village was able to provide for clothing, and if all villages were close to each other, they would have a market and they would trade their food for Joe's clothing.
I ain't trying to be funny, but that video is garbage and boring. I think we had better luck just reading Wikipedia. So now here it says in international economics, the balance of payments, also known as balance of international payments and is abbreviated BOP, of a country is the difference between all money flowing into a country in a particular period of time and the outflow of money to the rest of the world. So basically what it is like a balance sheet, almost like a accounting for the economy, for the respective economy. Okay? Does that make any sense? If that makes any sense, give me a thumbs up. If it doesn't make any sense, give me a thumbs down. So basically, it's the input output of the economy. Money in, money out. Okay? These financial transactions may be made by individuals, firms, and government bodies to compare receipts and payments arising out of trades of goods and services. The balance of payments consists of 2 components, the current account and the capital account. The current account reflects a country's net income, while the capital account reflects the net change in ownership of national assets. All right. So now where you go from that is a currency devaluation, is a currency devaluation. All right. So now here, what you guys see right here is in macroeconomics, a modern monetary policy, a devaluation is an official lowering of the value of a country's currency within a fixed exchange rate system in which a monetary authority, which would be for us, the Federal Reserve, formally sets a lower exchange rate of the national currency in relation to a foreign reference currency or currency basket. All right. Now, as you guys see where it says select one to redefine your search. Venezuela had a currency devaluation. You guys remember we did the video and we talked about how there was like 10,000, I think they used pesos in there, 10,000 peso loaves of bread. Let me see something real quick. Oh, here we go. All right, here we go. My bad. I didn't even have this up on the screen. Can you guys see this? So that's what a currency devaluation is. So now a balance of payments crisis, which is basically when a country is in debt. If a country's not able to pay off their debts, it can lead to a currency devaluation. because that means that the rest of the world doesn't have faith in your currency and the ability of the assets backing it to pay off the debt. What happens after that tends to be a bank run. What happens during a bank run or a run on the bank, it occurs when many clients withdraw their money from a bank because they believe the bank may cease to function in the near future, which basically translates into they believe that the financial system has failed. That's when you see those movies and the ATM machine is spitting out money all over the place and people fighting in the middle of the street. That's that situation. That's a bank run. Everybody's running to the bank to get all their money out, despite the fact that they don't realize that the bank doesn't have anything to do with the spendability of their money, because they're just getting out a bunch of paper and this shit's not going to mean anything anyway. When that happens, the financial system collapses, and usually there's social unrest. And then that tends to be the collapse of a country because people tend to not have any faith in the government. The power of the dollar is based on how much legitimacy people give to the United States and its ability to, one, maintain its assets, two, to either control other countries or to be able to pay off its debts. That's basically what that means. So that brings me to this video right here. Why the US dollar might be in danger. So here's a couple reasons why the US dollar might be in danger: because of our debt structure, because of inflation, because of China and Russia and their economic attacks on us through the petrodollar and through oil and gas prices and gold prices. And because our economy has changed. We don't have a manufacturing base anymore. We have a service economy, and it's a lot easier for people to lock us out of the economic market if they want to. The only thing, in my opinion, that's holding the United States economy together is our military, which our military, as of right now, is in the process of being surpassed. We don't have up-to-date missile defense systems. We don't have up-to-date hypersonic technology either. Who knows what the future will bring?
Of the dollar's impending doom.
I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think I will use the word doomed in the long term.
The US dollar is the most powerful currency that exists today. It's accepted and traded almost everywhere in the world and has shown strong resilience through numerous financial shocks and mounting fiscal debt.
The US dollar for the last couple of decades has been the preeminent global currency in virtually every dimension you can think of.
It allows us to have a great demand for our currency and for our bonds. So it often allows us to live a bit beyond our means, so we can borrow easily and at low interest rates in the world to finance economic growth.
But some experts worry that the dollar's dominance may be under threat.
I tend to think that nothing could ever dislodge the dollar from this preeminent status as.
So now what I need you guys to do is I need you guys to tell me what it is or why it is that the dollar could possibly be under a threat. What is the threats to the dollar? Let me know in the comment section.
As the world's currency. That view is overblown and ultimately will be challenged.
So what poses a threat to the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency? And just how long can its dominance last? America's growing account deficit is one of the biggest threats to the dollar.
The US dollar ought to be under threat. After all, the US government has been running massive deficits for a long time, which should in principle be reflected in high inflation, which in turn should reduce the dollar's value and the dollar's role as an international currency.
This is most evident in America's current account deficit, which means the value of imported goods and services exceeds the value of exported goods and services,
The current account.
So that right there, they're talking about what? We just talked about the balance of payment. Remember, balance of payment is in and out. Balance of payment crisis could possibly occur. Why could it occur? We have a severe balance of payment crisis with China. We buy way more from China, which means that we send them more money than we receive, as well as China plays dirty economically. What do you guys think about that?
Which means the value of imported goods and services exceeds the value of exported goods and services.
The current account balance, as we call it, has been in deficit every single year since the early 1980s.
There you go. So, see, I just mentioned the balance of payments crisis, and this is going right into what I just said. I mean, literally 1 minute and 57 seconds into it, that's the first thing they talk about is how we're literally in a daily balance of payments crisis that nobody's cashed in on. But do they talk about this in the mainstream media? No. Anybody talk about this? Not really. But this is what it is. This is what's happening. Like, this is what's going down. Yeah, I agree, Ricky. And that's another way that they quantitatively ease our financial situation. You have to really understand the intricacies of the financial system to really understand what it is exactly that's going on with the money. It's not exactly what it seems. And it has to do more with global finance and global economy. We don't have anything that we export of value other than weapons and military services, which is one of the reasons why we have military bases all over the world. What else are we exporting other than military mercenaries? Alleged democracy. We're spreading democracy, allegedly, actually American imperialism. We're spreading whatever it is that we're spreading because we don't have anything else of value. So we have to convince these other countries that what we're spreading has value. The military and all of the wars is one way that we prop our financial system. That's something that a lot of people won't talk about. Liz Cheney actually has plenty of time to talk about it now since she won't be working for the government anymore, but she probably won't.
It's evident in America's current account deficit, which means the value of imported goods and services exceeds the value of exported goods and services.
The current account balance, as we call it, has been in deficit every single year since the early 1980s. In some years it's modest, and some years it's big, and right now it's big in the U.S.
During the fourth quarter of 2021, the U.S. current account deficit hit $217.9 billion, amounting to 3.6% of America's GDP. Experts like
that right there. That is not only unheard of, but that is insane. That right there is like imagine a vibrating floor at a nuclear power plant. That's what that is. Seriously, I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. Like, that's literally the volatility that you're looking at. Like, it's like a 90-pound weight on the skinniest twig that you can find. Our deficit is 3.6% of the GDP. The increase in our GDP yearly is supposed to be 2%. That can't even pay off the deficit. What do you guys think about that?
GDP. Experts like Stephen Roach believe that this growing deficit is directly related to a low national saving rate.
And when countries do not save, which is the case in the United States,
How does the United States save when its actual middle class, people that make $250,000 or higher, are living paycheck to paycheck? We have a debt structured financial system. We have a debt structured financial system. That's one of the reasons why your credit score is more valuable than your bank account balance when it comes to the American consumer market. Would you guys agree with that? Your credit score will get you more than your actual bank account. We have a debt-based financial structure. Our financial structure is not built for there to be a long-term sustainable savings plan. That's one of the reasons why you see all of the old funds, the Social Security, all of that stuff. There is no savings. None of it. It's all gone. And if it's not gone, it's on the way out. Because our economy is not set up for that. Our economy has been falsely propped up and quantitatively eased for a very long time. And every day, Russia and China are trying to exploit that, and they're pushing on that. And in my opinion, right now, we have unqualified misleadership that not only doesn't know how to handle an economy under normal circumstances, but they don't know how to handle the economy when it's under hostile attack. I mean, look at how I don't think that we would even be in this bad of a situation right now had the Russia-Ukraine situation been dealt with different. Remember, I kept saying that at the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine situation. I said, this is a trap for Biden to bite, and everything that Biden does to Russia is going to bounce back and hurt the United States more. This is a trap. Putin already got back lines set up with China to where anything that the EU or the United States tries to do to Russia, it's going to hurt them more than it hurts Russia. I said that shit. I said that's going to be the worst mistake Biden does is if they try to excessively sanction Russia. That shit is going to bounce back, and you may as well have just sanctioned the United States. And look at this. Look at what we got. Look at the situation. Most of this fallout, in my opinion, is a result of how Russia and Ukraine was handled with the foreign policy failures. You know what I'm saying?
End up borrowing surplus saving from abroad to square the circle. We can do that because we have this, almighty dollar, the world's great reserve currency. And so we have been borrowing massive amounts of foreign savings from abroad, and it provides a relatively painless way of financing our current account deficit until something happens that changes the minds of foreign nations who want to lend us their surplus capital, their surplus saving. And, I think there's a risk of that down the road as our international balance of payments deficit continues to expand.
The US dollar has been the world's reserve currency since most countries abandoned the gold standard.
America went off the gold standard and wrote an ounce of gold split up into 20 pieces, each called $1.
Now, see, this is one of the things that people need to start asking themselves the question about. Who voted for us to be off of the gold standard, and why are we not on the gold standard anymore? Now, here's the question. This is a question that you got to ask. If we're not on the gold standard, what is it that's backing our economy? If we're not on the gold standard, What's backing the economy, guys? If our money can't be exchanged for gold, then my question is, what value can we exchange our money for? And if we don't know what we can exchange our money for, should we be questioning its value? Does it have value? You should know what you can exchange it for. It's money, it's a value, right? Shout out to my man Kareem. What up with it? What's good with it, Chanel? So-called good faith in the military, just like that last economist was trying to explain. American resiliency. Yeah, no. No.
That means a substantial amount is held by central banks and major financial institutions to use for international transactions. But its share has been steadily dropping. During the fourth quarter of 2020, dollar share in the global foreign exchange reserve dropped to its lowest share in over 25 years. The rise in alternative currencies may be to blame.
It has come down, partly because of the introduction of the euro. The euro has become held to a greater extent over the years.
Renminbi started playing a role as a reserve currency just a few years ago, and it accounts for a relatively modest share, less than 3% of global foreign exchange reserves, but it's been chipping away very modestly at the dollar's role. Plus, there are other reserve currencies, including the Japanese yen, the British pound sterling, but even some of the smaller reserve currencies, such as the Canadian dollar and the Australian dollar, that have all gained marginally in terms of their shares.
While the recent geopolitical crisis has caused investors to flock to the dollar, strengthening its position, whether that safety will last is another question.
The fact that we may have overlooked some alternatives, whether it's the euro, the renminbi, or, dare I say, cryptocurrencies, the case for a weaker dollar is one that I think we will then address again.
Why does the value of the dollar decrease and increase?
When the dollar softens, it usually isn't a cause for concern. In fact, it could even be beneficial for the U.S. economy.
Sometimes if the economy is faltering, having a weaker currency can provide a boost to those exports by making them more competitive in the global market. So a weaker dollar at times could certainly be a benefit. The flip side is too weak a dollar means that you tend to get high inflation, and that can be discouraging to foreign investment.
If the dollar becomes too weak, it has the potential to have a catastrophic impact on the American economy.
It would make imports a lot more expensive.
Now, see, this is where you guys need to pay very close attention, because this right here is where they're going to explain the exact situation that we're in right now. Because there's only so many different ways that you can explain these kind of things. That's why I always ask the question, is the world correct? Because the way that you answer that question, if the world is correct, is you look at all the variables of an equation and you put them in the equation and see if you get the answer that you see in front of your face. Because in front of your face is the other side of the equal sign. So if you put all of the elements in, and what you get after you process that equation is what you see, then that just answered your question for you. If both sides are equal, then the world is correct. Every single time you put all of the correct variables into the equation, you always get the correct answer. You'll get what you see in front of your face. So, based on everything that we know about how our financial system has been managed and where we are today, the situation that we're in with our dollars and with our economy, that's why we got to ask the question, is the world correct?
and that would certainly drive up inflation. And if that came at a time when inflation was already rising, as is the case right now, that would certainly put a lot of pressure on the US economy. If foreign investors started dumping US government bonds and other types, that would certainly drive up interest rates, which would in turn would make them basically all the rates on borrowing by US consumers and companies much more expensive, which might substantially affect both consumption and investment and bring down economic growth.
In response, the equity and commodity market would most likely take a hit as well.
Most commodities are priced in dollars, and if the dollar were to go down, that would certainly have a significant impact on commodity prices around the world.
I disagree. If you pay very close attention to the relationship between dollars and commodities, usually when the price of gold goes up, the price of dollars is decreasing, and when the price of gold is going down, the value of dollars is increasing. And usually the reason why is because when people start to lose faith in the dollar, they'll put their monetary value, their purchasing power, into something that has a store of value, like gold or like silver. I gotta agree with my man AB Promotions. The world is correct. We're literally looking at these things. That's why I always tell people to reference the old videos, because what I try to do with my videos is I try to start with the base pieces and build you the picture that you see, or the picture that's about to be painted. And there's no skill. The only skill is observation and pattern recognition. That's it. I am probably not significantly smarter than anybody in this chat. I'm not significantly smarter than anybody in the world. But one thing that I've practiced and one thing that I've learned is that pattern recognition, I think it's a very important component of having accurate analysis, which is why I try to show people, okay, this is where this is starting at. This is where it's going to end. So these are places where you can capitalize. These are places where you need to be careful. These are places where you may need to do further investigation. Silver is always a good buy. In my opinion, so is gold. You always want to try to diversify your portfolio and have something that's inflation proof. A lot of commodities can be looked at as somewhat inflation proof. Dollar values may change, but dollar values only imply the amount of dollars needed to purchase something. Remember, purchasing power is what's important. Remember, we said that purchasing power is more important than a collection of dollar bills. Purchasing power is more stable than a collection of dollar bills. A collection of dollar bills may or may not get you more or less from day to day. In most cases, purchasing power is a little bit more stable as far as maintaining whatever kind of value it is that you're looking to hold. That's why people use gold. That's why people use silver.
A severely weakened dollar would also mean bad news for economies around the world that have grown dependent on it.
Certainly would reduce the value of a lot of US dollar assets, and that could create a lot of havoc in the global economy.
Anytime you have turmoil in US financial markets, that is going to spill over to the rest of the world. The same is going to be true of the US dollar, because after all, when the US dollar depreciates, it has to depreciate
No problem,
against
Mimi.
the other currencies of the world. And that would hurt those economies because many of them, including the Eurozone, China, Japan, they rely a great deal on exports for economic growth.
See that? Now, that right there is why China has an economic advantage over us. You see how it said China is in position for exports to grow its economy. We don't have what is growing our economy right now here in the United States. We don't have any exports. What are we exporting? They claim we have, what do they call, a service economy, but who are we servicing though? Like what, who is it that we're providing a service to? What up with it, Sarah Lynn? What's good? Good to see you. What is it that we're servicing? What kind of service are we providing? Entertainment for the rest of the world, for the most part. Hollywood, NBA, NFL, wars. That's a good one. Coffee. That's facts. Not really anything tangible though. Yeah, I'll be black. Facts, bro. Debt. One of the only exports that we have other than arms. LGBTQ. You know what I'm saying? What else we exporting? That's bringing back any value. You know what I'm saying? Now, here's the thing with the tech. Are we manufacturing tech and sending it out anywhere? Most of the 5G manufacturers, most of the computer chip manufacturers, most of those are in China and Taiwan. Who do you talk to when you talk to some telemarketer? It's very rare that you talk to somebody that is an English, as a first language person anymore. That's besides the fourth industrial revolution with artificial intelligence taking people's jobs, the United States not having a viable economy with no product production is another reason why these politicians are trying to get people prepared for a universal basic income, because we don't do anything. If you go and get a job at Amazon, you're shipping pre-manufactured things to other places in the United States where people have already bought them. You're not producing anything and shipping it out anywhere. Amazon is like a middleman. They're a distribution point, distribution hub, retail, stuff that's imported, put together already that can be sold elsewhere. What are we raw exporting? Look at where Microsoft is getting all their engineers and stuff. Their electronic engineers and computer programmers. They get them from India because India has a surplus of computer scientists, and when they can teleconference those jobs and pay them less. A lot of those people work remote locations. We export trends, fashion, and sports. You remember one of the things that Trump was trying to do? Trump was even trying to get the manufacturing to come back here. Trump sanctioned a bunch of American manufacturers. Remember? Trump sanctioned Harley Davidson because he wanted Harley Davidson to bring the manufacturing of motorcycles back here to the United States. Yeah, even the Federal Reserve is illegitimate. Facts. So if you truly ask yourself and think, what's an American product that's exported overseas? Corruption. That's it. Corruption is exported overseas so that we can manipulate and bully the smaller countries that we act as if we're spreading democracy to, the raw resources that they have, so we can profit off of how they distribute that stuff to China and Russia, so China and Russia can't take advantage of it. Why do you think that we're only in third world countries ever spreading democracy? Yeah, we're spreading democracy. We're spreading how to democratically use those people's resources to prop our economies because we ain't making shit and we don't have shit. We're all up in Africa for the natural resources. We all up in the Middle East for the oil. We just happen to conveniently need to spread democracy to all the places where natural resources are so that nobody else can get to them, so that we have something to prop our dollar with, and we can prop our dollar with these banana republics that we set up all over the world. That is wrong. That is extortion. That is incorrect, dishonest business practice. But that's what we're doing. We export colonization. Colonization 2.0, Deneen, you're right. Except for with army tanks and helicopters. Why is it that these countries, African countries, South American countries, the Middle East, they just can't get it together? No, they can get it together. What happens is that their leadership gets taken out, because what ends up happening is somebody in that country wakes up and says, we don't need these people. We're getting extorted. We can manufacture and export things on our own. But wait a minute, the United States is acting as if they're giving us military protection and overcharging us for our natural resources. No wonder we can't ever get ahead. They're getting all of the benefit and paying us pennies on the dollar. And then the leader that wakes up and realizes that somehow ends up in a casket. And somehow a drone shot him up. Something exploded and there was a freak accident. Or some rebel forces just happened to overtake the government somehow. And then when they do an expose on it 10 years later, they find out, the serial numbers were from American gun manufacturers. Some shit like that.
Most experts, however, argue that the US dollar is far from the end of its reign.
I think the chances of that happening in my lifetime are negligible. The world's reserve currency, which the US dollar is, usually has an independent central bank. It has a strong, usually military backing to provide that security, it has deep and liquid bond market.
There you go. I mean, this video, you'd have thought that I'd have watched this video before we talked about this shit. I mean, there it is. The military. Notice how the military is the first thing that they said, because we don't have anything else. Think about this. What is the United States export products? What is it? What do we export to the rest of the world? Besides corruption and LGBTQ, what else do we export to the rest of the world? What else do we have to offer? Do we have any material product like a specific kind of car, a specific kind of telecommunications technology, a specific kind of food resource? Weapons and military personnel. Shout out to my man B1 First. What up with it, bro? Degenerate behavior. Yeah. So how do you maintain an economy on that? And what happens then, like how the United States is being shown up? What happens then when it's revealed that maybe your military isn't worth what you've been paying? That's kind of what Russia is doing. They're kind of showing the world, hey, I mean, you can go ahead and keep dealing with the United States, or you might mess around and be the next Ukraine. And you see how Ukraine looks. Is that what you want? You don't think that China saw that and said, well, shit, let's start pushing up on Taiwan? I mean, come on, Taiwan. You don't really trust the United States, do you? I mean, look at Ukraine. Now the value of United States military occupation decreases because look at Ukraine. This is what you're paying for. You're paying for the big bad United States to be in your backyard and make sure that nobody comes and invades you. And Putin can just decide to roll some tanks through there and knock a couple buildings down like Snoop Dogg, Daz, and Corrupt did. Okay. I guess you're getting overcharged. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, U.S. is absolutely good for arms trafficking. The United States armed and funded the Azov Battalion back during the time when Barack Obama was in office. If you go look at any alleged terrorist organization, whether it's ISIS, whether it's Al Qaeda, whether it's the Taliban, whether it's 17 November, whether it's the Azov Battalion, the United States gave them their guns. Whether it's Al-Shabaab, the United States provided them their weapons. Whether it's MS-13. Because little do people know, the United States is responsible for the formation of MS-13. All kinds of beef going on with people and Hispanic people and this, that, and the other. YouTube scholars and historians. Nobody talks about the United States and their intricate role in the formation of MS-13. What is U.S. role in the formation of MS-13? What does MS-13 mean? Who knows how the United States helped to form MS-13? Because just like every gang, it wasn't always a gang. Anybody know? Everybody talks about MS-13. Nobody knows how MS-13 was formed. You guys should look it up one day. But I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with a civil war that the United States started in El Salvador.
Usually has an independent central bank. It has a strong, usually military backing to provide that security, has deep and liquid bond market that foreign investors can invest in. When we've seen concerns about events in the global economy, whether it's the economy or geopolitical events, the dollar's gone up, not down. It's seen as a safe haven.
What happens when there is financial turmoil, either in the US or around the world? Investors around the world are going to look for safety. And what is the only real place that you can go for safety in large amounts? The US financial markets. This is why I think a dollar collapse actually is quite unlikely, because the implications of a dollar collapse are that you would have a real search for safety, and the only really safe place to put lots of money remains the US.
While the pandemic did cause volatility in the price of the dollar, its value today hasn't seen much decline compared to prices before the pandemic.
The US economy has done better than most other economies through the pandemic. It's recovered more quickly. Our interest rates are moving up faster than they are in other countries, which means you earn more by putting your money in US dollars than you might, say, earn in Japanese yen or alternatives. The dollar continues to be quite strong. And then when we get these moments of flight to safety, as we've seen with the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, the dollars actually tended to go up as investors look to the most liquid and safest markets to put their money in.
Concerns over account deficit and the net savings rate could be overblown.
We've certainly seen our debt to GDP rise, but our cost of financing the debt has been quite low, so it hasn't been particularly onerous for the economy to service that debt.
Most importantly, while there may be alternatives to the dollar, there just isn't a realistic alternative for reserve currency.
When you think about what's required to have the world's reserve currency, it needs to be freely convertible. China's currency is not. They have capital controls. You need an independent central bank. You need large and liquid debt markets. Europe certainly is a large economy, but their debt markets are somewhat fragmented because it's a combination of different countries. And so you put that all together, and right now there's no kind of present currency alternative. I don't know what the future of crypto is, but it was certainly nowhere close, I would say, in the evolution of that to even think about it, taking the place of the US dollar.
For now, the dollar's dominance will likely continue.
That lady's thought process is outdated and dangerous.
But so will speculation surrounding its health.
The dollar is emblematic of strength in international finance, but it's also emblematic of the obligation that we have for running our economy in a way that is compatible with that enduring strength. And there's a lot of issues, some of which I've raised, that draw questions into that presumption that need to be looked at very seriously.
So there's that. And I agree. There's definitely a lot of shit when it comes to the United States dollar that needs to be looked into very seriously. Oh, so yeah, so Mimi must have looked it up. El Salvador was involved in a civil war. La Marachura Salvadoria. The Marachura were guerrilla fighters in the Salvadorian Civil War that the United States funded. When those people immigrated to California, they set up a coalition to protect Salvadorian immigrants from other gangs. The Salvadorian Civil War was a 12-year period of civil war in El Salvador that was fought between the government of El Salvador and the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front, a coalition or umbrella of left-wing groups. A coup on October 15th of 1979, followed by government killings of anti-coup protesters, is widely seen as the start of the Civil War. The war did not formally end until January 16th of 1992, with the signing of the Chapultepec Peace Accords in Mexico City. The UN reports that the war killed more than 75,000 people between 1979 and 1992, with approximately 8,000 people who disappeared. Violations of the most basic human rights, particularly kidnapping, torture, and murder of suspected FMLN sympathizers by state security forces and paramilitary death squads, were pervasive. The Salvadorian government, who was responsible for these torturings, was considered an ally of the United States in the context of the Cold War. During the Carter and Reagan administration, the United States provided $1 to $2 million a day in economic aid to the Salvadorian government to slaughter and torture the civilians. The United States also provided significant training and equipment by the military. By May of 1983, it was reported that the United States military officers were working with Salvadorian high command and making important strategic and tactical decisions. Counterinsurgency tactics implemented by the Salvadorian government often targeted civilian non-combatants. Overall, the United Nations estimated that the FMLN guerrillas were responsible for 5% of the atrocities committed during the Civil War, while 85% of the atrocities were committed by Salvadorian security forces, aka the government, aka the allies of the United States. Accountability for these Civil War era atrocities have been hindered by a 1993 amnesty law. In 2016, however, the El Salvador Supreme Court ruled that the law was unconstitutional and the Salvadorian government could prosecute suspected war criminals. Fast forward to 2022. La Marachura Salvadoria has evolved to MS-13, one of the largest gang networks in the United States. Just like every gang in the United States, funded and created with United States blood and dollars. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you already know what to do. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys hit the bell icon twice. Share the video out, and I will catch you all at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time with my man TD Hip Hop Media on Just Talking. All right? Peace.